I can still vividly remember going to sleep thinking, there is a 50-50 chance that this is the end for me. Like, I hope I wake up in the morning, but I'm not entirely convinced. Hey friends, Sheila here. I'm a nutritionist and bicycle traveler. Welcome to my channel. Lately, I've been planning my future bicycle adventures, and it got me thinking about the many mistakes I made on my first bike tour. So today, I wanted to share some of them with you so you can learn from my errors. If you are new to bike touring, I hope you find this video helpful. If you are a seasoned pro, I would love it if you left any mistakes or things you learned on your first bike tour in the comments below so that we can all learn from each other. Without further ado, let's jump into the 4 mistakes I made on my first bike tour. Number 1 is not drinking enough water. I know, I'm a nutritionist, I should know better, but we're all human. And when I started my first bike tour, I was in Scotland. Most days it was between 10 and 15 degrees. It was often overcast, sometimes rainy, and so I just didn't have those same thirst cues. I didn't feel myself getting thirsty, and so I'd often find myself getting to the end of the day having drunk very little. Luckily, I never bonked or had anything serious happen, but it could have, because our bodies really do need that hydration. One super helpful thing I learned along the way was to flavor one of my bottles. So I'd make one of my bottles either half juice, half water, or I would add some mint or lemon or fruit to it to just kind of flavor it. The juice was always a really nice option too, because I was getting a bit of sugar at the same time. I found ones that had that flavor to it. It was something I really looked forward to drinking, and that I ended up drinking a lot more. And then I would also have that second bottle of just pure water for when that was what I felt like. So learn from my mistakes and stay hydrated. Number 2 was being intimidated by a language barrier. On my first bike tour, I spent about 6 weeks cycling around Scotland, and then I took the ferry from England to the Netherlands and spent about a week cycling around the Netherlands. And even though I absolutely loved the Netherlands, there were a few days in there that were the first low point of my tour, and I genuinely considered quitting. I just felt kind of sad and lonely, and as I dug into what was going on, I realized that what it was a language barrier. Or, to be more accurate, what I perceived to be a language barrier. Because truthfully, most Dutch people speak English exceptionally well, but I just felt so badly that I didn't speak their language that I was really avoiding conversations. In Scotland and England, I would ask for directions and chat with other cyclists, and I really never felt lonely because I was making all of these awesome connections. But when I got to the Netherlands, I think I was just so worried that I would be perceived as this annoying tourist that didn't speak the language. But that was really all in my head. From then on, I learned to always learn a few words of the new language wherever I went, and to not be afraid to chat with people, because truthfully, they were always so happy to help, even if we had to mime at each other. So obviously, I always try to be respectful. I never expect somebody to speak my language in their own country, but I also don't let myself lose the experience of being in that place because of my own language limitations. Number 3 was not practicing wild camping at home. Not like at home, but near home. It can be really intimidating wild camping for the first time, especially on your own. The first time I wild camped was just a few days into my bike tour. I can still vividly remember going to sleep thinking, there is a 50-50 chance that this is the end for me. This is where I die. Like, I hope I wake up in the morning, but I'm not entirely convinced. Totally irrational, of course, but our brains can play tricks on us when it's dark, it's nighttime, you're in the forest, you're on your own in a totally new place. I also didn't have cell reception on that first wild camping experience, so it was just a lot scarier than I think it needed to be. If I could do it over, I would practice some wild camping closer to home before heading out, either with someone or on my own, just to get a feel for what wild camping is like before trying to do it on my own in a totally new place. Number 4 was not adequately preparing to stay dry. I feel like there are 3 key components to being happy while you're on a bike tour. The first 2 are getting enough sleep and eating enough, so you aren't exhausted or hangry. And I was pretty good at both of those. The third one is where I learned a hard lesson, and that is staying warm and dry. If you watched my video on surviving a leaky tent in a rainstorm, then you'll know that that was mistake number 1. If you haven't watched it, I'll link above and below so you can witness that disaster. I brought a very old tent on my first bike tour, and I actually set it up before I left to make sure all the pieces were there, but I did not test it in the rain. And boy, did it leak. Trying to sleep while water drips on you and all your stuff is a terrible experience and not at all recommended. My rain jacket and my rain pants actually held up quite well, but my rain booties, they weren't the best for long rides, and they were also really difficult to put on, which meant I would procrastinate putting them on, which if you do that while it's raining, I mean, obviously your feet are gonna get wet. Live and learn. We live and learn. Anyway, now I have waterproof socks and shoe covers and a new tent, so we're learning. Okay, so those are the 4 things I did wrong on my first bike tour. But here's what I did right. Number 1, I did it. I got out there and I did it, even though it felt really scary and I felt like I knew nothing. Number 2, I stayed curious and I kept learning. I learned from every mistake I made. I soaked up the great information given to me by other cyclists and at bike stores, and I kept learning and ultimately became a much stronger cyclist and bike tourer. I really feel that as long as we're doing it and we're learning, I think we're doing it right. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed learning from my mistakes, please give this video a like. It really supports the channel. And if you want to be notified whenever I put out new videos, you can hit subscribe and a little bell below. And if you want to continue following along with my adventures, you can follow me on Instagram at sheila.daily. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.